It's going to be hard to find a shout in here, but I brought one or two of my own amens. And so it's an interesting story because Jesus is teaching, and then all of a sudden a younger brother comes up to Jesus and says, Master, would you tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me? Now, most of us would not think of that as a bad thing to say because he is entitled to it. Most of us would not think that this brother is doing something wrong. Jesus turns right to the brother and says, who made me judge over you? In fact, what he's saying is, why are you coming to me about you and your brother's stuff? He said, who made me a judge over you? And he says, watch out for covetousness. Because you need to know, I know you want me to talk about money today. He says, but you need to understand that a man's life does not consist of what he owns. What's in your pocket does not define you. What you're wearing does not define you. You are not your title. As a matter of fact, let me tell you a story. So he says, there was a rich man who had a great field, and his field produced bountifully. Then this man said to himself, what am I going to do? I don't have enough room in my barns. I know what I'll do. I'll tear down my barns and build bigger barns so I can put all my stuff in it. I'll pack it out everywhere so then I can say to my soul, soul, you are good. You've got a good bank account. You got a 401k. You got a 403b. You got it going on. You're driving this. You're driving that. You dress good. You look good. You are set for the rest of your life. And then God jumps in and says, fool. Now, you know you're in trouble when God calls you a fool. I mean, it's one thing for people to call you a fool, but when God calls you a fool, he says, your soul is required of you tonight. He says, you're coming home tonight and you worried about what's in your bank account. He said, the problem is you've been rich, and this is the problem with you. You store up everything for yourself, but you have not been rich towards me. He says, now here it is. You thought that life was in that. Not one of those things can get you up out of your sick bed. Not one of those things can stop the inevitability of this moment. And who have you helped? Who have you been a blessing to with all of this? Because now that you're leaving, you can't benefit from it, and you didn't see to it that somebody else would be blessed. That's the problem when you have too much stuff. That's really what I want to talk about, and I'm going to get out of your way. The first thing that comes up in the text when you have too much stuff, the teaching of the text is tailored to teach us, don't let stuff get between you and your family. If there's anything that I've learned over the 26 years of pastoring is that one of the things that can tear a family apart is discussion of stuff. I've watched far too many families fall apart over who gets the car, over who gets the money, over who gets the stuff. And you ought not ever let stuff get in between you and your family. It's in the text. Jesus even says it. This young man comes and says to Jesus, would you tell my brother to give me the inheritance? Now, most of us would not think that this is a bad thing because he is entitled to something depending upon how big this family is. If it's just he and his brother, then his older brother gets 2/3 and he gets 1/3. If he's got another brother, then the older brother gets half, and then they have to split the other half. And all he's asking for is his half of it. But Jesus says, first of all, why are you coming to me about something between you and your brother? He says, if this really is between you and your brother, then you need to go and talk to your brother. I thought I'd get a shout right there. You see, sometimes we want to run and get real spiritual over something that's very practical. And the Bible teaches us you can't run praying about something. You need to be going and handling yourself. Don't run to me about your brother. Go and talk to your brother. I wonder, can I just park here parenthetically for a few moments and remind somebody in here that if there's somebody you got a problem with, the only way you really gonna fix it is you've got to go to them and talk it out. You need to call your brother up tonight. You need to call your sister up tonight. The only way the miracle of forgiveness can happen is if the two of you talk. Jesus says, why are you coming to me? Why are you coming to me for this? This is something that you have to deal with your brother. And you need to remember that anything that you can taste or touch or feel or wear has a T on it marked temporary, but relationships are forever. You are not ever let a car or some money or some stuff get in between you and the family that God gave you. Because is there anybody in here that's lived long enough to know the only thing you're going to be able to count on in life is your family? You've got to learn how to keep the family together. The reality is God blesses you with family. God blesses you even with that family. I'm going to have to stay here for a minute, but somebody's going to shout in 30 seconds. Even that family member that gets on your last nerve, they're still in the family. And has anybody in here lived long enough to know that that one that got on your last nerve might be the very one that blesses you and get you out of the situation? You better learn how to take care of family. Learn how to love your brother. Learn how to love your sister. But then Jesus gets a little deeper and he says, you know, stuff is not what makes your life. Now notice what Jesus says. Jesus says, now we wouldn't call this, but he called them greedy. He says, you're being greedy. You're being covetous. But watch the reading of the text. He says it to them. The Bible says this young man says, and then Jesus says to them. He says, number one, you're being greedy for asking about it. And you, son, are being greedy for not doing what you're supposed to do by your brother. You know you're the oldest one. And so you know that the inheritance came to you. And you know that you're supposed to divide it with your brother. But you ought not be sitting here thinking that somehow your life is going to be categorically even better, or you're going to become something you weren't the day before just because you get this money. You need to understand, oh, I wish I could find